Silence isn't weakness. It's the calm before a storm that breaks everything in its path. Underneath that quiet exterior lies a mind sharper than any blade, a fire burning hotter than the sun, and a power waiting to explode. Clueless. No. Calculating. Underestimated. Absolutely. But the truth, it's about to slam into the room like a wrecking ball, and no one will ever see it coming. This is not a story of noise. It's a story of force. A force that moves in shadows, that waits patiently, and then strikes with precision. Welcome to the rise of the silent storm. They thought you were clueless. Then you dropped the truth and shattered the room. They looked at you and saw nothing. Not because you weren't something, but because they were too blind to see the storm hiding behind your silence. They thought you were slow, unsure, harmless. They misread your silence as stupidity, your calm as confusion, your quiet eyes as empty. But they didn't know you weren't empty. You were full of rage, full of memory, full of truth. You just weren't ready to speak yet. You were still collecting, still building, still becoming. They mocked you, not always with words. No, sometimes it was a glance, sometimes a laugh, sometimes just the way they looked through you, like you didn't even exist, like you were background noise to their spotlight. And still, you said nothing. You let them have their moment. You watched them play their little games. You studied how they moved, how they lied, how they pretended to be more than they were. You listened, and you learned. But inside, something was growing. A twisted, dangerous awareness, a sharp edge forged out of every insult, every lie, every back turned on you when you needed someone the most. And the more they underestimated you, the more you sharpened yourself in the shadows. You became the weapon they didn't see coming. They thought you were clueless. You were choosing silence. Not because you had nothing to say, but because they didn't deserve to hear what you'd become. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't argue. You didn't try to prove yourself. You let them talk. You let them laugh. You let them dig their own graves in ignorance. Because you were waiting for the perfect moment, the one they never saw coming. And when that moment arrived, everything stopped. One sentence. That's all it took. One truth from your mouth. Heavy, cold, undeniable, and it shattered the entire illusion they'd wrapped around themselves. Their faces fell, their eyes widened, their egos crumbled like glass, because the person they thought was blind had been watching the whole damn time. That silence they used to mock, that was your power. That cluelessness they laughed at, that was your mask. And now that you've dropped it, they're terrified, because they know you were never behind. You were ahead. You were never lost. You were observing. You were never weak. You were calculating every step, every outcome, every possible move. And now you've played the final one. Checkmate. This isn't just motivation. This is war paint. This is your reminder that silence is not the absence of power. It's the patience to unleash it at the perfect time. This is your anthem. If you've ever been made to feel small, stupid, or insignificant, you are not their joke. You are their reckoning. You didn't just surprise them. You rewrote the story. You flipped the script. You shattered the room. So to every twisted mind that's been laughed at, to every quiet soul that's been pushed aside, to every warrior hiding behind a broken smile, your time is now. Please like, comment, and subscribe to Twist Mind. if this hit your soul, because this is only the beginning. That was their fatal error. They thought ignoring you was harmless. They thought delaying your rise, pushing you to the side, underestimating you was nothing. Just another name, just another face in the crowd. But what they didn't understand was this. Every second they didn't take you seriously. You were evolving. They didn't give you time to fail. They gave you time to prepare. They gave you time to build your mind like a weapon. They gave you space to construct silence like armor. They gave you hours, days, years, where you had nothing but grit and vision. And in that silence, in that delay, in that pause where they thought you were done, you were just beginning. Time is the most underestimated element in the formula of power. Everyone wants speed. Everyone wants spotlight. But you learned to sit in the dark and listen to your own hunger. You learned to sharpen it. You weren't screaming for attention. You were studying the system. You weren't begging to be noticed. You were learning how to dominate quietly. You saw them rising fast, burning out quicker. You saw them laugh loud and collapse louder. And you just kept building. Day by day, inch by inch. While they got comfortable, you got dangerous. You weren't just growing, you were mutating into something they couldn't comprehend. You were watching, observing patterns, dissecting lies, finding cracks in their image, learning how to be the last one standing while everyone else got drunk on their early wins. That's the truth no one admits. When you give a focused mind time, you're feeding it power. And when you give a wounded soul purpose, you're building something unstoppable. You were hurt, but you were patient. You were mocked, but you were methodical. They told you to wait your turn, but they didn't realize you were building your own table. And when you came back, you didn't ask to sit down. You owned the entire damn room. They had followers. You built loyalty. They had attention. You built precision. They wanted applause. You wanted impact. And now the ones who once ignored you sit in rooms and whisper about you. They watch your moves in silence. Because it's not about what you say anymore. It's about what you became when nobody was watching. Time didn't make you softer. It made you sharper. It made your silence a weapon. It made your return a reckoning. They thought they left you behind, but what they really did was give you distance. Distance to rise, distance to breathe, distance to become so different, so dangerous, so prepared that now they don't even recognize what's coming. And that's the most poetic part of this story. They stalled your journey thinking it would break you, but it didn't. It built you. They delayed your path thinking you'd give up, but you didn't. You mastered it. Because in the end, you weren't just coming back. You were coming back ready to silence every name that once doubted you, not with words, not with screams, but with your presence, with your rise, with the proof that time, when given to the right person, doesn't weaken them, it unleashes them. They measured success by the noise they made, the crowds that cheered, the spotlight that shone, the quick wins that fed their egos. But you learned that real power is in endurance, in survival, in outlasting the chaos and coming out on the other side with scars that tell stories, not weaknesses. You didn't just outsmart them in a moment. You outlived their entire game. Every flash of arrogance they threw was just a momentary blaze, burning fast and fading quicker than they expected. But you were the dark fire beneath the ashes, the steady pulse that kept beating when their noise died down. While they raced to show the world how big and loud they could be, you were steady, unshaken, building yourself brick by brick in silence. Their loud wins were shallow. Your slow burn was eternal. You remember those days when their laughter echoed in the hallways and your voice was lost in the shadows, when you wanted to scream back, but chose to breathe instead, when the weight of their doubts threatened to crush your spirit, but you bent without breaking. Those moments weren't failures. They were your training ground, your survival school, your secret weapon. You weren't just fighting to win a battle. You were fighting to win a war, one that required patience, resilience, and the cold steel of perseverance. They played chess, you became the whole board. They moved fast, impatient to win the game, to grab fleeting victories. But you moved with purpose, knowing the value of every step. They celebrated their momentary dominance, but you waited for the moment when the game would flip, when their kingdom of lies and arrogance would crumble beneath your feet. You outlived their schemes because you understood something deeper. Time is a weapon in itself. It doesn't just test strength, it reveals true power. To outlive someone means to survive their best attempts to stop you, to walk beyond their limits for you, to keep breathing when they hoped you'd choke on their hate. And you did exactly that. You walked through their fire without letting the flames consume you. You carried your pain like a crown, not a burden. You watched as they wasted their energy chasing temporary glory, while you quietly shaped a legacy that couldn't be erased by noise or time. And now the irony is brutal. The same people who once dismissed you, who ignored you, who spat on your dreams, they are the ones left gasping to understand how you survived when their brightest moments flickered out. You didn't just survive their judgments. You didn't just beat their expectations. You outlived their work, their illusions, their shallow victories. You became the shadow they never predicted, the echo that returns louder than the original noise. You proved that the loudest voice isn't always the strongest. The strongest voice is the one that holds steady when the room goes quiet. The strongest voice is the one that rises, slow and sure when everyone else has burned out. You didn't just outsmart them, you outlasted them. You outbreathed them. You outlived. And when you finally dropped the truth, the one they thought you never knew, it wasn't just a moment of victory. It was a declaration, a statement that your survival wasn't luck or coincidence. It was calculated. It was deliberate. It was inevitable. Because true strength is born not from the battles you win in noise, but from the wars you survive in silence. And you are the living proof of that. Being quiet isn't easy. It's not peaceful like they imagine. It's not soft, not gentle, not calm. Being quiet is brutal. It's raw. It's painful. 'Cause silence doesn't mean you're okay. It means you're swallowing fire with a straight face. Every day you walk into rooms where people talk over you, look past you, act like you don't even exist. And you let them, not because you're weak, but because you're choosing a war they don't even know they're in. See, the world worships noise. Loud people get attention. Aggressive people get respect. And if you're quiet, if you choose not to yell your worth, they label you as nothing. They say you're slow, disconnected, empty. But what they never understand is silence doesn't mean emptiness. Silence means depth. It means calculation. It means control. Whoa. You've been carrying thoughts too heavy for surface conversations. Emotions too sharp for careless hands. You've walked through storms with your mouth shut and your fists in your pockets, and they thought that meant you weren't fighting. But inside, every second was war. Every minute, a scream you never released. And that's the cost. The price of being quiet. The pain of watching people misjudge you while you're holding back an entire hurricane behind your ribs. They think you're ignoring things, but in truth you're recording them. Every insult, every fake smile, every dismissal. It all gets locked in the vault of your memory and you don't forget. Not because you want revenge, but because you know someday your silence will speak louder than anything they've ever shouted. You've had moments where your chest felt like it was going to explode, where holding back your truth felt like trying to cage fire. But you held it, not because you couldn't break, but because you refused to break in front of them. They wanted to see you unravel. They wanted to watch you collapse so they could pretend they were stronger. But you gave them nothing. You gave them silence. And that silence, it made you dangerous. Because silence is misinterpreted. They think you're scared. They think you're lost. But in reality, you're building. In the silence, you're constructing a version of yourself that doesn't need permission to be powerful. You're crafting responses that slice like glass. You're stitching up wounds that they tried to rip open. You're designing a future where you don't have to explain your worth to anyone, because it'll be undeniable. And while they speak just to be heard, you wait for the moment when your words will shake the ground beneath them. That's what quiet people know, the power of time. They talk because they crave attention. You stay silent because you're planning an execution of truth so precise it'll be impossible to ignore. You've paid the price. You've bitten your tongue, you've bled in silence. You've smiled through humiliation. You've endured being seen as less than by people who couldn't handle a fraction of your reality. But now you know the power that's been building. You can feel it in your bones, like something seismic is about to erupt from within. They thought your silence was a weakness, but your silence, it was strategy. It was survival. And now, it's becoming your weapon. They saw your smile and believed it meant you were soft, harmless, easy to bet. But what they never saw, what they never even thought to consider, is that behind that smile you were sharpening something fierce. Behind that grin there were knives being forged. Behind every moment you laughed along with them, you were biting down on your rage, feeding it, learning to aim it with precision. They mistook your friendliness for weakness. They thought your politeness was fear. You were never afraid. You were measuring who was real, and who only showed up when the lights were bright. You were taking notes. Who doubted you? Who laughed? Who smiled in your face and spit on your name the second you walked away? And through all of it, you smiled, because that's the beauty of being underestimated. It gives you time to prepare. It gives you room to evolve in peace. You smiled when they made jokes about your dreams. You nodded when they gave you backhanded compliments. You let them play their part while you rehearsed your ride. Every word they spoke in arrogance was another piece of evidence, another file stored in your vault. And in that vault, something cold and quiet was growing. You were not trying to impress them. You were planning to replace them. While they laughed, you learned. While they flexed, you focused. You saw through their ego. You watched them walk around like kings in kingdoms made of paper. And you said nothing, because you were building a fire they couldn't smell until it was already burning at their feet. You didn't want to prove them wrong with noise. You wanted to do it with facts, with reality, with undeniable evidence that you were never behind, never out of your depth. You were simply deepening, while they stayed shallow. That's what your smile hid. Not innocence, not ignorance, but intent. Sharp, silent, strategic intent. Because the most dangerous people in this world are the ones who stay calm when they should be breaking. The ones who smile, not out of joy but out of understanding, out of knowing that the game being played is far too small for the war you're about to unleash. Your smile was the stillness before a storm, and now the storm is moving. With each passing day you're stepping more into your truth, and they're beginning to realize the smile was never weakness. It was your shield, and underneath that shield, a weapon was being sharpened that they could never survive. They'll never admit it, but they feel it now. In the way you walk, in the way your silence now feels like pressure, in the way your eyes see through them, like you've already calculated every lie they've told. And the worst part, they can't undo what they said. They can't reverse what they did. The knife has already been forged, and it was never meant to be thrown in rage. It was meant to be placed gently, right between the illusion they lived in and the truth they never saw coming. There's a moment when all the waiting, all the silence, all the hidden fury inside you suddenly bursts into the light, not with a bang, but with a sharp, surgical cut. The kind of moment that splits the air and leaves everyone frozen, stunned, and breathless. This moment is the reveal. The truth you hold so close, the knowledge they never suspected you had. And when you finally drop it, it's not just a statement, it's a scorched earth. They didn't see it coming because they were drunk on their own arrogance. They were tangled up in their own lies and games, blind to the fact that the quiet one in the corner was watching every move. The one they called Clueless. The one they thought was lost. They were so sure of their control that they never once doubted you were a threat. And that was their fatal mistake. The reveal is not loud. It doesn't shout or demand attention. It is precise. It cuts through the noise like a scalpel slicing through fabric, exposing the rotten threads beneath their carefully crafted facade. And when it hits, every false friend, every hidden enemy, every spectator with a smug grin, their faces crumble. Their confidence shatters. Every jaw in that room drops to the floor, eyes wide with disbelief, with fear, with the ugly realization that they have been played. They discover that you knew all along, that every betrayal, every slight, every insult was cataloged and understood, that the truth you wield is not a weapon of rage, but a weapon of undeniable fact. It's the truth that can't be denied or deflected, the kind of truth that burns and burns and burns until there's nothing left but ash. This moment is your silent revenge, not fueled by anger, but by the cold satisfaction of justice. The justice that comes from knowing you outlasted their schemes, you outmaneuvered their lies, you rose when they thought you were down, and now with this single reveal, you deliver the final blow. One that cannot be ignored, one that cannot be undone. There is a certain power in silence, the power to wait, to watch, to gather strength. But there is an even greater power in the reveal, the power to show without a shred of doubt that you were never the fool, that the person they underestimated was always the one who had the upper hand. And in that moment, the room changes, the energy shifts, the tables turn. No more games. No more pretending. You become the truth that haunts their thoughts, the shadow that never leaves their side, the reminder that they never saw you coming because they refused to believe you were capable, because they only saw what they wanted to see. And you shattered that vision into a million pieces. This reveal doesn't just burn the room down. It rebuilds you stronger, more powerful, and more unbreakable than ever before. It's the proof that silence was never your weakness. It was your strategy. It was the waiting that made your strike lethal. It was the patience that made your comeback inevitable. And now that they have seen it, now that they have felt the weight of your truth, they will never look at you the same way again. They will carry the memory of that moment in their minds forever. The moment when the person they thought was clueless turned out to be the one who shattered the room. In every story there is a moment, the unexpected moment that changes everything. The moment where the calm turns to chaos, where the light flickers and shadows rise, where the underdog becomes the master of the game. That moment is called the plot twist. And you are that plot twist, the one no one saw coming. The wild card they never planned for. They wrote you off too soon. They painted you as the background noise, the side character, the one with no power. But every story needs a twist. A break from the predictable. You are the break, the shockwave, the silent force that rewrites the rule. You are the dark card flipped when everyone thought the game was over. The silence that screams louder than 1,000 lies. You carried the weight of doubt, the chains of invisibility, the crushing pressure of underestimation. But instead of breaking, you became something new, something no one could control. You molded pain into power. You shaped silence into a weapon. You transformed scars into armor. And now, standing tall, you hold the truth like a dagger, ready to cut through every doubt and disbelief that once tried to hold you down. This is not just a comeback. It is a revolution, a declaration that your story is not a tragedy but a masterpiece of resilience. You don't just survive the storm. You become the storm, the unpredictable force that no one can ignore. You are the twist that flips the narrative, the ending that leaves the audience breathless, and the enemy speechless. And here's the beauty: you don't have to shout. You don't need to prove it with noise or flash. Your presence alone is proof enough. The room changes when you enter. The air thickens. The unspoken respect rises, because they know deep down that this plot twist wasn't a mistake. It was destiny. You're destined. You are more than what they thought, more than what they said, more than what they ever dreamed. You are the answer to every doubt they whispered behind your back. The proof that patience, pain, and persistence are a lethal combination. The living, breathing reminder that the quietest people often carry the loudest storms inside. So own it, embrace it, become it. You are the plot twist, the unexpected truth that breaks the cycle, shatters the illusion, and changes the game forever. Please like, comment, and subscribe to Twist Mind if this hit your soul. Because your story is just beginning, and the world is waiting for the chaos you will create.